The Cincinnati Bengals head into the 2025 offseason wondering how they can both make a Super Bowl winning roster and also keep Tee Higgins as well. My name's Tyler here with my brother Ryan, and we are going to be doing our first ever mock free agency for the Bengals and seeing if we can make it happen. Before we get into it, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, tackle that bell, and leave a like and a comment. Let us know what you want to see the Bengals do this offseason and why. And Ryan, let's pull up the free agency list here. And so there's some big names on here, but none bigger than Tee Higgins. That's going to be the big one.
Yeah.
And kind of going through it, it's even interesting too, looking at how some of these other receivers are getting paid as well and how expensive they are, and then thinking about the Bengals and like if they do end up keeping Tee Higgins as well and how much they're going to pay him, then they're going to pay Jamar Chase more. So like we were kind of already just like thinking about it, like holy cow, they're going to have 70 to 75 million dollars, if not even more, like going to like just like their top two receivers, which is going to
Yeah.
be maybe close to a third, maybe a quarter of their cap space, and then let alone like Joe Burrow's contract as well. Totally deserving as well if they can find the role players, and so that's what's going to be
Yeah.
interesting to see is like, can they hit on over these next couple of years, hit on the role players, their draft classes as well, so then they can have extremely good players on cheap contracts, just like what they've been doing right now with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. So, but there's a bunch of other guys though here that are going to be hitting free agency: Mike Hilton, B.J. Hill, Von Bell, Cody Ford as well, Joseph Asai, Mike Gesicki. Any of these other names here that you think are going to be serious contenders to making the roster come 2025?
Not any outside that you just named. They have a pretty good group there up at the top though. And so I do feel like those guys will be highly sought after by other teams. T. Higgins, again, like you said, the main one, he was tagged, so he will not hit the open market. But with that being said, like they're gonna hopefully reach an agreement on a contract extension. They said that they're gonna tag him with the intent to extend him, but we'll just have to see. They kind of said that last year as well, where it was like they wanted to extend them, but they were never able to agree on terms. So I think it'll be interesting to kind of see what they do there. I really hope they can. I feel like it's a little crappy of the Bengals to just keep tagging him, because eventually, like they could really be keeping him from getting a lot of money on the outside market. With that being said, I understand they don't just want to let him walk,
Yeah.
but
Well, and,
I
and with that also being said, too, $20 million is still a lot of money. I would love, hey,
well,
Bengals,
true.
you can tag me anytime you want. Yeah, I would
Well,
gladly.
yeah, and they're gonna
I
pay
know.
him
I
$26 million for this year, but it's the guaranteed money over the longevity of his career that, I
yeah,
think that they could be impacting. If, like, let's say they tag him this year, they're not able to, reach an agreement, and then it's like he tears his ACL this season, and then it's like, well, nobody's paying him 30 million plus a year now. And so that's
exactly.
kind of the why the players don't like getting franchise tagged. But let's move on now to the free agent side here. So there is an internal free agency and part that we're going to do, and then an external free agency part. So starting
And
off here,
well, and I will say too, Ryan, sorry to cut you off. They're
no, you're
coming
good.
into this with about
Yeah,
$62 million in cap as well. So we've already made a couple of moves just for the sake of
yeah,
time. But I just wanted to put that out there.
yeah. And so one of the first moves is they do release Sam Hubbard. They're able to get $9.5 million back. And one of the things I think that's hurting Sam Hubbard in his case to maybe stay with the Bengals is just how deep this edge class is in the 2025 draft. Especially at pick 17, there's just so many edge rush options. You think Michael Williams, Shamar Stewart, Nick Scorton, Mike Green, James Pierce Jr. Like there are so many guys that could be taken at pick 17 that there's just no reason for the Bengals to really be paying Sam Hubbard $9.5 million when they can go get an equivalent or an improvement in the draft here in a month and a half or two.
Yeah.
So I feel like that doesn't help his case there. The other guy, Zach Moss. Zach Moss just wasn't able to contribute enough. Chase Brown really kind of took over in that top role there for the Bengals, and so Zach Moss kind of gets cut. Like the edge class, this is also a really deep running back class, and I expect the Bengals to dip in there for a rotational back at some point as well.
Yeah, and so those are the two main guys we're going to focus on. There's some guys maybe down at the bottom that are more role players, some journeymen that
Mhm.
would be like maybe $1 million here or there, but essentially that's they end up getting, if they get cut, then they just get the Bengals will re-sign somebody to about the same amount of contract. And so there's a couple other guys up top that we thought about, like Alex Kappa, Ted Karras. We even talked about like what would they want to do with Trey Hendrickson as well. But we ended up keeping everything at status quo as is, especially too. And Ryan, you had I think the best point of everything, but it's like this offensive line still isn't really that great, and so you don't want to go and just cut these guys and try and like and then
Make
like
it
now
even worse.
yeah, and make it even worse. So at least there's still some cohesiveness there, but we are going to address the offensive line here in a big way. And so, but first, starting off though with I obviously with T Higgins as well. It's interesting to kind of go and look at where all the other top receivers are being paid at as well. Like with Justin Jefferson being the number one receiver, and then you go like CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown. Like I think those guys are the top receivers. I think Jamar Chase is going to be making more than that. That's just the way that these negotiations work out. So I think he's almost a sure 36 million. So it's like where is T Higgins going to fall in? And the debate, Ryan, and I think the one that you and I had as well is probably similar to what's going on with the Bengals and T Higgins right now. Is it going to be 28 million? Is it going to be 32 million? Because the Bengals are trying to save every million they can for Jamar
Yeah.
Chase. And I look at it now, I see it. It goes Tyreek Hill, Brandon Ayuk. They're both at 30 million. Jalen Waddle's at 28.25. Devontae Adams is at 28. And I think T Higgins is kind of in that range as well. And so we agreed on the number 30 million a year. I think that's about right. It's wild to say, but I think that that is about right for what T Higgins would be getting. And I think one of the things in his favor too is kind of how weak this free agency and also this draft class is when it comes to like top heavy, like blue chip talent, uh,
Yeah.
receiver, so to say. Hypothetically, like if Tyreek Hill was in free agency and Amon Ra and also like Brandon Ayuk, for example, they would all be competing against one another. But with T Higgins, he is really kind of and maybe I'm missing somebody overall when it comes to this free agency class, but he is like the one kind of blue chip guy. There might be one other guy here, and I'll mention him in a second. But T Higgins, I think, is benefiting a lot from just kind of how weak this overall offseason class is.
Yeah, and that is, I think, ultimately why the Bengals just decided to tag him. I do think the Bengals have the better interest of actually giving him the extension that he deserves. But with that being said, you have teams like my New England Patriots who, if T Higgins was going to hit free agency, I'm sure the Patriots would give him up to upwards of 32, maybe even like 33 or 34 million to come and play football for that franchise. And frankly, like the Bengals, they have to pay Jamar Chase. You could let T Higgins walk and sign Jamar Chase and be okay. But if you outspend yourself to the point where you have to get rid of Jamar Chase, I feel like that is when like heads will roll in the Bengals organization, and a lot of people will be
Oh
let go
yeah,
of their job because as great as T Higgins is, Jamar Chase is just another on another level. So uh, re-signing T Higgins, we came to a 4-year, $30 million deal. It's about the same of what Brandon Ayuk got, but I do think that that's going to be probably about the size of deal that he gets, probably with about 80 to 85 million in guarantees. So that last year will be, I guess, not voidable, but like they could cut him after 3 years and not have to pay him anymore. So moving on to the next internal free agent, we did bring back Mike Gesicki. Him and Joe Burrow just had a really good connection, and he was not super expensive. So you bring him back
hmm
here for $2.5 million, and you keep that offense intact. He did a good job, just kind of being the receiving tight end, not going to block very much for you, but you put him in between T Higgins and Jamar Chase, and just about anybody will look good. But Mike Gesicki did a good job in that role as well.
yeah, yeah. I think there's another guy that Ryan, I kind of want to hear your thoughts on, and I'm just thinking about this now, even while we're recording it live. But with Mike Hilton, like their nickel corner, he is gonna be 31 years old, but like according to what Spot Track saying, PFF saying, like he might be getting like 10 plus million as well. He, I think, would be kind of maybe one of the guys that you would want to think about like paying to keep,
Yeah.
especially then too overall when it comes to the just the secondary and like whatever good there was from last year. Is that something that you're thinking about as well? Is that something that you think they would do, or do you think they let him walk? All things considered.
Um, Depending on what size contract that he wants to sign. I mean, I would be willing to do like a 2-year, $20 million contract, kind of like what I have here. Let's just go ahead and add that in. It puts you at 35 million in available cap space. Um, that would kind of handicap some of the things that we had planned to do for external free agency, but I do think kind of looking at it, maybe you could if he signs this type of deal though with another team, I would take the comp pick probably and then just maybe
That's fair.
address free agency externally and then also maybe address secondary in the draft because that is going to be I think a major sticking point for them in the draft is that they need to come out of this draft with a corner, a solid corner, or a solid safety.
And that's fair too. And I was just thinking about that just as a talking point, and it's kind of I guess kind of opposite logic, kind of the same way, but opposite logic is it's like the secondary was so bad last year. Be like you might as well kind of blow it up and like put some young rookies back there that are cheaper and let these guys walk.
Mhm.
Because it can't really get too much worse. So you're gonna have a new defensive coordinator in there, and so that's fair. Let's undo that. Let's say Mike Hilton does end up walking here because I think who they're gonna be getting and who the money they're gonna be bringing in for,
Yeah.
is gonna be much more worth it, and it's gonna be this guy right here, and so the Bengals, they've already, poached from the Kansas City Chiefs for one of their offensive linemen, and I think they could do it again as well. Go and get Trey Smith here. He's the other, I think, top guy in this free agency class as well, who's of age in his prime, going to be getting his second contract, so they're going to be paying him. And if you if you're Cincinnati, you're still kind of in this never-ending search to just get a better offensive line to protect Joe Burrow. Because imagine what this offense could be is if they could have a Detroit Lions style offense with the skill position players that Cincinnati Bengals have right now. Like this offense might be unstoppable. Like as unstoppable
Yeah.
as the Lions offense was last year, it's like you put Joe Burrow back there with Jamar Chase, Tee Higgins, and then whatever running back. Chase Brown, I think, is a benefactor in this scenario. But if you can go get Trey Smith, really start to improve this offensive line, and they've been trying to do that. Like to be fair to them, they've been trying to do that, but keep on trying to just improve this offensive line, make it as uh, better, as great as it possibly can. Even if it was top 10, if it was a top 10 offensive line, it doesn't need to be the best. Uh, who knows what this offense could do as well. So I think going to get Trey Smith there, I think he's going to help out a lot. It's
Yeah.
going to alleviate, I think, some of the pressure from some of these guys or from the decisions that need to be made on who needs to start, on whether it needs to be Alex Kappa or Ted Karras. You might be able to move some guys around to best fit everybody's needs. So I think Trey Smith comes in for sure starter as well as you're trying to win a Super Bowl within these next couple of years with these big contracts.
Yeah. And I think that is like you have two major offensive additions here. Both benefit Joe Burrow and Chase Brown, as you said. And I feel like that's a lot on the offensive side of the ball. They will definitely invest some draft capital that way. But this offense was already one of the best in the league this past season, and they just got a little bit better adding Trey Smith. So let's go ahead. Let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball and add a couple of guys there. Let's start off with Kendall Fuller. So I know he's an older corner. He's not quite as old as Mike Hilton, but you go add him on like a 1 year, $6 million deal to come in and just kind of be set the floor for that cornerback room for this Bengals franchise. I think that will be really beneficial for them. He can be the outside corner that you need. And then the other guy too that I wanted to add, let's do Justin Simmons, the former Broncos safety that played for the Falcons this past year. And now you can get him on like a 1 year, $5 million deal. And I think that solidifies the secondary for this season. Obviously, you want to make some long-term plans. Maybe you invest like a second or third round pick at either of the safety or corner spot. But I think too, I think you look at 17, that's going to be a really prominent edge spot. There's going to be a lot of defensive tackles there. This is a really deep defensive line class as a whole. And so I think by going and getting some veteran secondary guys, shore up the back end of that defense. So that way, when you guys do score 35 plus, you're not like 3-7 in games where the offense scores over 30 points.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's And this is where if you don't like these moves, this was about the same amount of money as like if we would have re-signed Mike Hilton as well. So it's
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a wash either way, but you still go get some veteran presence as well while drafting young. I think another guy then too that could be available. That he'll definitely be available at the 17 spot, but maybe Jade Barron. I think with his versatility, you could place him in. He could be that nickel corner
Yeah.
for you guys and replace Mike Hilton and get him on a uh, longer term rookie contract. So there's a lot of different ways I think the Bengals can approach the draft. But priority number one is getting Tee Higgins signed to a long term contract, kind of putting that behind you as well, kind of also just getting that kind of conversation out of the media, be like, okay, we signed this. Now I guess you got to move on to Jamar Chase. But
Yeah.
uh and they're going to have plenty of cap space next year as well. We saw like at the end of all that, after all those contracts, still 120, 130 million, it looks like available in the cap space. So still plenty of room to maneuver for getting Jamar Chase next year as well. And so it's going to be fascinating to see what happens over these next couple of weeks. I bet now, like it was already, he was threatening to sit out. T.
Yeah.
Higgins was last year with a franchise tag, but he ended up doing it anyways. If they do it again this year, I bet there's like no. I bet he blocks all their numbers. He's like, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm moving. I will be in Florida or California, and then send
Yeah.
me a mail of where I've been traded to. Like
Yeah.
that's gonna be how those conversations are gonna go if they don't come to an agreement come
Yeah.
June, July, or training camp at least. So,
Yeah.
but we'll have to see. Cincinnati, still, I think, a very underrated team. They just need to put the final pieces together and then find lightning in a bottle.
Yeah. No, I think they have a lot of contract negotiating to do. I am excited though. They have more cap space than I thought, especially in future years. So this could be a really good thing for them. Put T. Higgins on this contract. You sign Jamar Chase to an extension next year, and like you still have a decent bit of room to
Yeah.
work with. So let's go ahead. Let's wrap up this video here. If you guys have not already, please go ahead and like and subscribe. That is the best way to help out the channel. While you're down there, leave a comment on what you thought of this Bengals mock free agency. Did you like it? Did you hate it? What would you have done differently? Other than that, we'll see you guys next time.